Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Bell, aka Stakuyi, and welcome to the December Q&A for Aura History Untold. My friends, in today's video we've gathered more questions from you, our wonderful community, so please, by all means, keep those coming as we use those in these episodes. Joining us for the first time, though, is Oxide Games creative director, Brad Wardell. Brad, welcome to your first Aura Dev Diary.
Thanks, it's great to be here. I've been looking forward to talking to the Aura community for a bit.
Now, since this is the first time that the community may be meeting you, do you want to share a little bit about your role on Aura and experience in the game industry in general?
Sure. So I was a co-founder of Oxide back in the day, and I designed Ashes and Singularity, which was the first game that Oxide made. And before that, I designed Galactic Civilizations 2, which some people may be familiar with. And I've been making 4X games for around 30 years. I joined the Oxide team as creative director this past spring to help the team bring Aura to fruition. And it's been just a fantastic experience getting it together, getting the game out the door, and seeing the wonderful fan reaction.
Well, that's awesome. Then we do have a lot of reactions. We have a lot of questions. So I guess without further ado, Hen, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Great.
Okay, so after the massive version 1.1 update this last month, we have a lot of excited Aura fans here who have a lot of questions on, I guess, how things have changed and what more can be done. So let's go ahead and dive right in and answer those. First off, we have a question from Dummy Dumb Grump, which, oh dear God, that name, on Reddit, who asked, do you have any specific strategy to win on the highest difficulty besides early on aggression and weakening other nations? I played a few times on the highest level, and I am always way behind in prestige scores that make me fall off in Act 1. The only strategy which allows me to survive and win is aggression from the first turn. What makes war-oriented nations, or I guess what makes it does make war-oriented nations more favorable in the scenario?
Well, that's a great question. And really, in the game, prestige is king. And that comes from masterpieces if you really want to optimize to prestige generation. So it is a little counterintuitive at times, but if you take your paragons and rather than make them all instantly be giving you a buff for your overall nation, finding places to build an altar, for example, and putting paragons in there can get them generating masterpieces early on. Another thing that's really important are the triumphs. So they generate a lot of prestige, and obviously it's a little bit easier if you just wipe out all your enemies early on to get all the land, but you can also find your way to victory by making sure that you are strategically getting the triumphs. In fact, one of the things that players might find a little bit surprising is that there are some advantages for skipping ahead in the tech tree. So one of the defining features of Aura is that you don't have to research every technology. You can actually skip certain techs. Now, the downside is you miss out on some of the unique improvements and units that come with that tech. But on the other hand, you can get a little further ahead and get access to triumphs that others don't yet have access to. And that can generate a ton of prestige.
That does make sense. Like, basically, you're sacrificing something in order to play the long game, if your gamble actually plays off. I get that. Well, then, our next question comes from the complete opposite of the previous name that we just covered, a cute little crab. Which, okay, also on Reddit, who commented, first, let me say I loved patch 1.1. I think it helped a ton to remove a lot of tedious and unnecessary micro. That being said, one thing I think would make it even better would be an overall on crafting orders. Right now, you can either tell a building to craft X number of times or craft infinite number of times. I think it would be great if you could place a min-max order with priorities.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have in development, and I don't want to give out too many spoilers, but we actually want to have production targets. So I get X number of, let's say, rope, and then once I have that, then switch to this, such and such, say, switch to wheels as an example. And once you hit that production target, it'll go and review again where you're at. But this way you can create things like queues, and you can create basically have a much firmer control on your economy.
That is actually nice. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that some changes are coming to make things easier for people. Well, next up then, we have a comment from Ernie2459 on the Insider forums, who said, suggestion, display food requirements for next tier with an optional warning. If you are upgrading your tier level, you will at one point run into food deficit. For now, I do not have the wiki open. It is very hard to plan for this ahead of time. I want to ideally generate enough food before going into the next tier so that I don't run into a deficit and stall my growth. Yeah, I guess suddenly spawn a city and everyone is starving.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And really, what we need to do is that before you add, when you mouse over that, we need to display more information of what the consequences for going up, because it's not just, for example, the food requirements. As you go up, as your cities gain levels, go up a tier, there is also increasing stats set for expectations on your people. And so that we do display some of that, but I think the food requirements would be a good addition.
All right. Well, then, moving on to another question here. We have something from CMDR Daddy on Reddit who asked, what factors affect city growth? Is an overabundance of food necessary? I imagine local negative food would slow growth, but does a small positive food locally slow growth? I am keeping happiness and health high, but sometimes a given city will grow very, very slowly.
Yeah, so city growth happened. So the growth of population is very much a part of the health of the city, because that keeps people from naturally dying off from disease and whatnot. But your health stat has a lot to do with it. Now, how surplus food doesn't on its own increase the rate of growth. You have to have surplus food for your people to grow, for your population to grow. But then there are ongoing natural growth factors that come into play. Now, one thing that can really help your cities grow, besides building things like farms and certain other improvements that have a growth buff to them, there's certain amenities you could add to your city that actually will do that. As an example, grain stores, dried goods. Later on, there's ones that boost your growth a lot. Canned goods, for example. So if we think throughout human history, what are the things that made big cities possible? And it has been improvements in health, improvements in food storage, right? In terms of keeping food fresh. So keep an eye out for those things. The tooltips will tell you if they affect growth.
See, I find that fascinating because I've seen in games before where they have like a difference between, yes, here's the farm that produces the food, it increases money because you're selling it, but then the actual storage increases growth because now you can actually have food for long periods and actually help it for a population, like a granary. That makes sense.
Yeah, in fact, one of my favorite elements of this game is that we call it the Las Vegas scenario, and that is I want to be able to found a city in the middle of the desert, but which will never be able to have very much normal food growth locally. But I should be able to have a pretty big city there, and that's where things like dried goods and other amenities that store food you can produce in one place and make sure is available there. That is really handy.
That does make sense. Okay, well, we're actually almost here at the end. For the second to last question, then, King David on Steam asked, possible to swap claimed regions. Is there a way to change a region you claimed for a city? I claimed a C region with only 2 slots and no resources, which I don't really want. I either want to just abandon it or to swap it for another valid region.
That's a really interesting idea. Now, right now, no, there isn't. I think we'd have to think carefully on it. It's always a fine, this is a game with more than its fair share of management in it. And so we want to make sure that we're not introducing a feature that would encourage players to, or not encourage, but make players forced to feel like they have to absolutely min-max every city. But I think it is something we should look at. So there's a couple of different types of region swapping we've looked at. For example, what happens if you want to transfer a region to swap one with another city, as an example, one of your other cities? That's something that's come up. The example that players have come up with is like, oh, I need this farm city, this fertile region. I want to dispense with the waterborne one. And that is something we're looking at, but we have to make sure we're not introducing more management to the game.
True, because some people will want to min-max and specialize, others just will not. It really depends.
Right, and we want to support people to be able to micromanage. We just don't want players to feel like they're forced to do it.
Well, then on that note, we'll end on a high note here, actually, with a great comment that comes from Braden Nelson 9090 on YouTube, who said, glad to see some updates in the game. Aura is one of the most solid foundations for a 4X game I've ever seen. Please keep working on it to make it something truly epic. Already love it, and things can only go up.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we love working on it. And I mean, this is really, and I don't like, a lot of our audience are, a lot of the people playing the game are like me. They've played a lot of games over many years, and we have a real opportunity with this game because we've been generously given the time and, more importantly, the budget to really enhance this game with free, meaningful updates. And the fans like him that give us these great ideas, we get to go back and go, yeah, we can do that. We can put this in here. And we have a full development team able to keep adding this stuff to the game because we realize like it's not very often that a 1.0 4X historical game gets released in our industry these days, especially a big scale one like Aura. And so it's been pretty exciting and really quite an opportunity for us to be able to go in and help the game evolve and find its uniqueness.
I agree. And I think that point that you made about specifically listening to the feedback from the community is arguably one of the most important things, because these dev diaries right here, I mean, it demonstrates specifically that people are being heard. And if there is an idea that sounds good, that is something that theoretically could be explored. And that's always good because people get to actually see the changes that they want without it just being mods. Anyway, I think that we are here at the end of all this. We've gone on for quite a while. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Brad. Is there anything else that you'd like to say at the end before it is that you have to go?
Oh, no, thanks for having me. It's really quite an opportunity and a pleasure to get to talk to the fans and hear what they have to say and listen to their feedback. And we look forward for a long road ahead of adding and improving on the game and making it really the game that we all want it to become.
And thank you so much to all of our fans for watching. Go and subscribe for future content coming to this channel and keep the comments coming. Also, go explore the free Modder's Paradise update in Aura History Untold, which is now available on Steam, Windows, and also PC Game Pass. Happy holidays to everyone, and we will see you all here next time.